see someone about to press their button. MP Labega, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning to Kafir. Good morning to my colleagues. Thank you for the Nature Foundation for that extensive presentation. Definitely need to review it later because there's a lot of good information, a lot that terms I'm not familiar with. But you mentioned that local fishermen are struggling with their catches. Is there a specific reason? I mean, obviously there's a reason, but what is that reason or reasons? And how could we change that as a government, parliament, etc.? You've also mentioned that protecting Indigo Bay coral population is very important. With the ongoing developments down there with the new hotel condominium development, is it already far gone what they're doing, or can regulations be placed on them? I know with the size of the development they're doing, development and conservation is kind of like an oxymoron. They don't really go hand in hand. But we need to make sure that, like you said, we protect the coastline, and if it's not too far gone, something definitely needs to be done. We definitely have a lot of work to do with government and parliament, and like you said, we don't have a lot of time because once these coastlines are gone, they're gone. And, you see a lot of, and you guys do a great job of posting on social media what's happening, and it's unfortunate that sometimes these big developments, they go ahead and they ruin the coastline, they start digging and they start their excavations without the proper permits, and then even if they're put to a halt or they're stopped, it's already damaged, it's already far gone. And even if you just receive a fine, it's already damaged, so I hope that government, the current government really takes a good look and a hard line to what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Labega. I see that MP Wever is next on the list. MP Wever, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. Good morning to those present here today from the Nature Foundation and Ms. Valia Pantaflet, also legal for the foundation. Just quickly, I saw in the SLA deliverables, you mentioned that 7% is allocated to protecting the endangered species. How many endangered species do we have currently? And also, is 7% enough to kind of protect them? Because the reality is, it sounds nice to be able to divide it in a way, but it needs to be sustainable as well. And then we're also seeing a lot, as my previous MP also mentioned, there's a lot of developments. So there's also recommendation from the Nature Foundations. How can we create that balance? Because there is a growth happening as well, because you don't want to, there are persons that have deeds to lands quite often on the hillsides. And we have a lot of family lands that still need to be divided within families. How is that balance being sought, and how can the Nature Foundation play a role into advising the public as to the possibilities and even the Ministry of ROMI of how do we best go about developing those kind of lands? Thank you so much.
Thank you, MP Wever. Would Ms. Hickinson be able to answer right away? Yeah, Ms. Hickinson, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Firstly, for MP Labega, the question regarding fishermen and their catch. We have a new project that's coming on through the Best Life funding that will be focused on stakeholder engagement with our local fishers and trying to develop a better relationship between the Nature Foundation and those that are trying to earn a living by the sea. Through that program, we have only had so far one meeting with local fishermen to try to see what their current situation is actually like and what struggles that they have. And during that meeting, one of the things that was highlighted is that they are having limited catch and they're finding it difficult to be able to catch enough to earn by the sea. There's very few of them that actually do that as a full-time job anymore, which would be a significant loss for St. Martin's culture and heritage if that were to no longer exist. So a couple of the things that impact the fish stocks are the health of the coral reefs, which are impacted by several things, of course. The things that are impacting the entire world, like climate change, coral disease, all of those things are relevant to St. Martin, but also how the environment is being treated here locally is significantly impacting that as well. Wastewater runoff, physical pollution, lack of protected areas, those all impact the fish stocks. If we create a protected area in one spot, the fish that reproduce there will move out throughout and be able to be accessible. One of the other things that is impacting the fishermen is, of course, the loss of their fish pots, because there is so much marine traffic and there is not a really defined area that is for fishermen. So the marine traffic goes through the same area the fishermen are trying to use. A lot of the larger boats can cut off the buoys at the surface, and then the fishermen not only lose the trap and all the money they put into creating the trap, it's very difficult to recover it again, which could lead to having what we would call a ghost trap under the water that's just continually catching fish but not being removed. So that's a significant issue as well. Creating areas that we could focus on supporting fisheries would be one thing that we could look at to help support fish stocks. And I think that that aligns really well with Government St. Martin's recent look at our food security. Regarding Indigo Bay, the regulations that could be placed there, well, firstly, I think we need to address the regulations that do exist. We're party to SPA, and if we are going to allow the destruction of a SPA-protected species, we need to address that. But I'm not sure what the standing is of the permits for certain developments. Of course, the Nature Foundation is not directly related in that process. So I'm not sure what has been issued and what hasn't been issued for the area, but we have been working with the ministry to look at the civil works permit process so that if a development is in a biodiversity hotspot, there's a trigger to reach out to the Nature Foundation and request advice. Or if a development is going to impact a protected species or a heritage tree, again, there's a trigger to look at that and see if that development should move forward as is. One of the best things that could be introduced is that for developments of a certain size, the requirement of an environmental impact assessment to be carried out prior to the development would alleviate a lot of pressure, not only on the Government St. Martin, because our infrastructure departments and our policy departments are not able to put together a full environmental impact assessment, but this is a very common requirement, not only in large countries, but throughout the region, that if you have a development over a certain size, they have to do an environmental impact assessment. That could be put in place, and it would directly address a lot of the issues that we're having. For the questions from MP Weaver, for the protection of endangered species, I also feel that 7% of our time looking at anything, of course, is extremely limited. I feel the same about 7% dedicated towards outreach and education, to be honest with you. There's a great need for that in St. Martin as well. What we're doing right now for the protection of endangered species really involves a lot of monitoring. There are several endangered species. I don't know the exact number because we have a lot of migratory species that come through as well. But for example, the sea turtles that are nesting on the beaches of St. Martin are endangered. And yet that doesn't seem to be enough of a reason to stop beachside development that directly impacts their nesting and habitat areas. So what we would be able to do in that vein is to expand the foundation's overall ability to do our work. Something to keep in mind is that our standard SLA, without the addition for invasive species that came through Parliament several years ago, only employs 3 staff. So 7% of our day is quite small in the end if it's only 3 of us as well. So we are by far the smallest conservation management organization in the Dutch Caribbean, and we rely really heavily on project funding, like the Carina project, to be able to execute tasks that we should be doing anyway. And to create balance with development, I think one of the first steps that needs to be taken is there needs to be a zoning plan for St. Martin. Through the framework of the Coastal Resilience Planning Project, the Ministry of Romy, of course, is working on the green zoning plan and standard zoning for St. Martin. That, I think, will help because if we know that we're able to conserve a plot of land in a certain area, then we can look at where's the biodiversity hotspots. Maybe there are areas of less significance that would be of less concern for development. But if we don't have a plan for the long term, right now what the Nature Foundation is looking at is that we do not know of any area that is safe. So we try to go and see if any area that is being developed can limit their impact. And it's unsustainable to continue in that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hickerson. I give the floor to MP Westcott Williams.